Zykster slouched at the grimy bar of Station Zero, his crystalline exoskeleton dulled by years of combat and neglect. The Centaurian whiskey in front of him remained untouched, its surface reflecting the harsh neon lights of the Frontier Station's shadiest establishment. Around him, mercenaries from a dozen species conducted their business in hushed tones, but none dared approach his corner. 6 failed contracts in a row had left him with nothing but debts and a reputation that was worth less than space dust. The syndicate's enforcers would come calling soon, and this time they wouldn't accept excuses. His neural interfaces buzzed with another warning about his depleted credits, and he dismissed it with a thought. Quite the predicament you're in, isn't it? The voice came from behind, speaking perfect galactic standard. Zykster turned, his optical sensors adjusting to focus on a human female. She wore a simple gray uniform with no insignia, but her posture screamed military. "Whatever you're selling, human, I'm not interested," Zykster growled, his translator working overtime to convey the proper tone of dismissal. The human smiled, sliding onto the stool next to him. "Captain Diane Winter, Earth Special Operations. I'm here to offer you salvation, Zykster of the Crystal Wastes." His secondary heart skipped a beat. Nobody knew his origin world, he'd scrubbed those records cycles ago. "How did you?" "We know many things," Winter interrupted, placing a quantum data chip on the bar, "including the fact that you owe the Syndicate 60 million credits due in 3 standard days." Zykster's combat systems automatically activated, running threat assessments. The human showed no reaction to his bristling weapon arrays. If anything, she seemed amused. "The contract is simple," Winter continued. "1 standard month of work. Payment is 70 million credits, enough to clear your debts and start fresh. All you have to do is help us test some new technology." "Humans don't have technology worth testing," Zykster scoffed. "Your species barely made it to the stars a century ago." Winter's smile never wavered. "Then this should be easy money, shouldn't it?" Zykster's sensors detected no deception in her vital signs, but something felt wrong. "Why me?" "Your neural architecture is compatible with our requirements, and your desperate situation makes you perfect for our needs." A warning ping from his threat assessment systems made him pause. "The Void Runners won't take human contracts anymore, neither will the Sigma Brigade or the Star Hunters." "Why is that, Captain Winter?" "Superstition," she replied smoothly. "Fear of the unknown. Are you saying you share their cowardice?" The barb struck home. Zykster had never run from a contract, even when prudence demanded it. His pride had cost him everything, but perhaps it could also save him. He reached for the data chip, but Winter's hand covered it. "One more thing," she said. "This contract requires mental flexibility. Previous experience suggests that rigid thinking can be hazardous to one's health." "Is that a threat?" "A warning, the technology we're testing operates outside conventional parameters. Some find this disturbing." Zykster laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I've seen horrors that would freeze your primitive human blood. Whatever you're testing, I can handle it." Winter stood, leaving the chip on the bar. "We'll see. The coordinates are in there, along with your preliminary payment of 5 million credits, enough to keep the Syndicate's enforcers at bay until you arrive." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Zykster, don't bother trying to run with the advance. The funds are tagged. If you don't show up at the coordinates within 20 hours, the money automatically returns to us and the Syndicate gets your location." Zykster watched her leave, then picked up the chip. His financial interface confirmed the transfer instantly, 5 million credits, more money than he'd seen in a year. The coordinates led to a system he'd never heard of, far from established trade routes. As he prepared to leave the bar, a Meridian information broker slithered up to him, their phosphorescent scales pulsing with urgency. "You took their contract, didn't you?" they whispered. "The humans." "What's it to you?" The Meridian's scales flashed patterns of fear. "The others, the ones who took their contracts, they came back changed, those who came back at all." "Changed how?" "Nobody knows, they don't talk about it. Just stare at things that aren't there and babble about dimensions and possibilities. The Void Runners, their entire command staff disappeared on a human contract. Now their ships hunt in the dark spaces between stars, attacking anyone who comes close." Zykster stood, his crystalline form catching the light. "Then I'll be the first to come back unchanged." The Meridian retreated, their scales now completely dark. "No, warrior of the crystal wastes, you won't." 20 hours later, Zykster's ship dropped out of FTL at the provided coordinates. A massive human vessel waited there, its design unlike anything he'd seen before. No weapons were visible on its hull, but his sensors couldn't penetrate its surface. A transmission came through. "Welcome, Zeixther, this is Captain Winter. Please proceed to Docking Bay 3, and remember mental flexibility." As his ship approached the massive vessel, Zeixther's sensors detected something impossible. Space itself seemed to bend around certain sections of the hull, as though reality was merely a suggestion there. For the first time since taking the contract, true fear crept into his crystalline heart. What had his pride got him into? And more importantly, what were the humans really up to out here in the darkness between the stars? The docking procedure was unnervingly smooth. Zeixther's ship settled into the bay as if guided by invisible hands, even though his sensors detected no tractor beams or conventional guidance systems. The air that rushed in when he opened his airlock tasted wrong, somehow not contaminated, but subtly different, as though it had experienced something his filters couldn't identify. Captain Winter waited for him in the hangar, accompanied by two other humans in dark uniforms. Their faces were partially obscured by shifting shadows that seemed to move independently of the lighting. "Your ship will be safe here," Winter said, nodding his hesitation to step away from his vessel. "Though I doubt you'll want it back in its current form when we're done." "What's that supposed to mean?" Zeixther's crystalline structure vibrated with tension. "You'll understand soon enough. This is Dr. Marcus Blackwood, our head of research, and Lieutenant Reese, security coordinator." The two other humans nodded, their shadows still moving strangely. As they led him through the ship's corridors, Zeixther's combat system struggled to maintain proper threat assessment. The walls seemed to pulse with subtle geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. His enhanced vision caught glimpses of corridors that appeared and disappeared, and sometimes he could swear he saw other versions of their group walking parallel paths. "Your neural architecture is already beginning to adapt," Dr. Blackwood observed, checking readings on a device that looked more like a twisted piece of abstract art than technology. "Fascinating. Most specimens take hours to start perceiving the quantum overlay." "I am not a specimen," Zeixther growled. "I'm a contractor." Lieutenant Reese laughed, the sound echoing in impossible ways. "The difference is mainly semantic at this point." They reached a massive circular chamber that hurt to look at. The walls curved in directions that made Zeixther's navigational systems crash and restart. In the center, a device that resembled a twisted spire of black glass rose from floor to ceiling, except sometimes it seemed to be falling from ceiling to floor or existing in both states simultaneously. "Welcome to the Nexus," Winter said proudly. "Humanity's greatest achievement and the key to our ascension." "What is this place?" Zeixther's translator struggled to form the words as reality flickered around them. "A door," Blackwood replied. "Or perhaps a mirror. We're still working out the terminology for concepts that exist beyond conventional spacetime." "You see," Winter continued, "humanity didn't arrive late to the galactic stage by accident. We weren't primitive or slow to develop. We simply took a different path. While other species focused on mastering three-dimensional space, we looked sideways." The spire pulsed, and Zeixther saw something move within its black surface, shapes that couldn't exist, geometries that made his higher cognitive functions scream in protest. "Your species' neural architecture is remarkably adaptable," Blackwood said, approaching a control panel that seemed to fold in on itself. "The crystalline structure of your brain allows for quantum entanglement on a scale we've rarely seen, perfect for our needs." "What needs?" Zeixther demanded, trying to back away, but finding that distance had become a relative concept in the chamber. "We need translators," Winter explained. "Beings who can perceive and communicate across dimensional boundaries. The entities we've contacted, they don't think like us, don't exist like us. We need intermediaries." "The other mercenaries," Zeixther realized. "The ones who disappeared, the Void Runners." "Successful transitions, all of them," Reese said. "Well, mostly successful. The Void Runners adapted particularly well. They now operate in 11 dimensions simultaneously, quite the tactical advantage." The spire's pulse grew stronger, and Zeixther saw the truth. The humans hadn't been testing technology, they'd been evolving it, growing it. The ship itself was a hybrid of human engineering and something else, something that existed in the spaces between conventional reality. "You're insane," he whispered, "playing with forces beyond your comprehension." Winter's smile turned predatory. "No, Zeixther, we comprehend them perfectly. We've spent centuries preparing for this, hiding our true research behind a facade of primitive technology. Now, with the help of beings like you, we're ready to take our place as the architects of a new reality. The spire shattered, or perhaps it had always been shattered, and was only now deciding to show them. Reality fractured with it, and Zeixter saw everything at once. Past, present, future, all merging into a kaleidoscope of possibility. He saw other versions of himself, some crystalline, some energy, some existing in states he had no words for. The payment was never about money, was it? He managed to ask, feeling his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of conventional space. Consider your debt to the syndicate erased, Winter said, her form shifting between human and something far more complex. In fact, consider the very concept of debt meaningless. Where we're going, such limited constructs have no meaning. The chamber filled with light that wasn't light, sound that wasn't sound. Zeixter felt his crystalline form resonating with frequencies from beyond the veil of normal space. His last coherent thought was a realization: the humans hadn't been lying about testing technology. They had been lying about being human at all. Consciousness returned to Zeixter in waves of impossible sensation. His crystalline form had changed, becoming something that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Where once he perceived reality through military-grade sensors and combat interfaces, he now saw everything. The chamber that had housed the Nexus had transformed into a space that defied conventional geometry. Captain Winter and her team stood nearby, their forms fluctuating between human appearance and something far more abstract. Other beings moved through the space, the missing mercenaries, he realized, though missing wasn't the right word anymore. They hadn't been lost, they'd been elevated. The transition was smoother than expected, Dr. Blackwood noted, his voice resonating across multiple frequencies of reality. Your crystalline neural structure adapted remarkably well. Zeixter tried to speak, but instead of words, fractals of pure thought emerged. What have you done to me? We've freed you from the constraints of linear existence, Winter explained. Her form settled briefly into human shape, perhaps for his comfort. But that's just the beginning, there's something you need to see. The walls of the chamber dissolved, revealing the true nature of the ship. It wasn't a vessel in any conventional sense, but a fold in spacetime itself, a bubble of controlled reality operating under laws the rest of the galaxy couldn't comprehend. Through his enhanced perception, Zeixter saw other ships, hundreds of them, hidden in dimensional pockets throughout human space. For centuries, the galaxy saw us as primitives, Winter continued. Late arrivals stumbling onto the galactic stage. It suited our purposes to maintain that illusion while we prepared. Prepared for what? Zeixter's thoughts crystallized into patterns of light. A new figure entered the space, walking through what appeared to be solid matter. Admiral Jensen, his uniform rippling with calculations and probability matrices. Prepared for the arrival of the architects, he said. The entities that exist beyond conventional spacetime, the ones who taught us the truth about reality. Images flooded Zeixter's expanded consciousness. Earth's first contact, not with alien ships but with tears in reality itself. Beings of pure mathematics and possibility, reaching across dimensional boundaries to touch human minds. The decades of secret development, hiding their true advances behind a facade of primitive technology. The galaxy's great powers think they've contained us, Jensen continued, his form briefly showing the complexity of his true nature. Restricted our expansion, limited our access to advanced technology, but you can't contain what you can't comprehend. Through the dimensional windows, Zeixter watched human ships emerge from impossible angles, bypassing defense systems that only worked in normal space. The Void Runners, now he understood their true purpose, moved through the darkness between realities, preparing the way. The architects are returning, Winter said, but the galaxy isn't ready for direct contact. The shock would shatter most species' consciousness. That's why we need translators. Beings who can bridge the gap between conventional existence and what lies beyond. The other mercenaries, Zeixter realized, you've been recruiting us to. To help ease the transition, Blackwood confirmed. To prevent the chaos that direct contact would cause. Think of it as an evolutionary step, guided by those who understand both sides of the dimensional divide. Suddenly, alarms blared across multiple frequencies of reality. Lieutenant Reese's form snapped into focus. We have company. The Galactic Council's finally noticed something's wrong. Their fleet just dropped out of FTL. Through layers of folded space, Zeixter saw them, 50 capital ships representing the combined might of the galaxy's ruling species. their weapons powered up, targeting systems seeking locks on the human vessel. Winter smiled, the expression visible across all her forms. Right on schedule, Admiral. Jensen nodded, his uniform now clearly showing its true nature, not cloth but living mathematics. Execute Phase 3, show them what they've been too blind to see. The human ship unfolded. There was no other word for it, though the process hurt to observe even with Zykster's enhanced perception. What had appeared to be a single vessel revealed itself as a nexus point for dozens of ships, all existing in the same space through dimensional manipulation. The Council fleet opened fire, and their weapons passed through empty space. The human ships existed in multiple states simultaneously, making conventional targeting impossible. Zykster watched in awe as the vessels moved in patterns that ignored normal physics, attacking from angles that shouldn't exist. This isn't a war, he realized, it's an announcement. Precisely, Winter said, watching the Council fleet's formations break apart in confusion. We could have done this at any time in the past 50 years. But now the architects are ready to reveal themselves, and the galaxy needs to understand its place in a larger reality. Through his new senses, Zykster perceived movement in the spaces between spaces. The Void Runners were emerging, their ships now visible for what they truly were, hybridized constructs of matter and possibility. And behind them, in dimensions that normal space couldn't contain, something vast was stirring. The architects were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Lieutenant Reese's form fluctuated with excitement. The Council fleet is retreating. Their sensors must be overloading from trying to process what they're seeing. They'll be back, Jensen said, with more ships, more weapons, and more ignorance of what they're truly facing. That's why we need you, Zykster, all of you, to help them understand that this isn't an invasion, it's an evolution. Zykster watched as reality rippled around the retreating Council ships, his new consciousness processing implications that his old self could never have grasped. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They'd simply opened a door that could never be closed. And now they were inviting everyone through it, whether they were ready or not. The galaxy erupted into chaos within hours of the Council fleet's retreat. Zykster watched through his enhanced senses as fear spread faster than light itself. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now faced a terrifying revelation. Their supposed technological superiority had been an illusion all along. From his position aboard the Dimensional Nexus, he observed emergency sessions of the Galactic Council through probability spaces. Representatives argued in circles, their minds unable to fully grasp what they'd witnessed. Their sensors and probes continued to fail, detecting human ships everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. They're gathering a larger fleet, Lieutenant Reese reported, his form shifting through combat algorithms. Every major species is contributing ships, even the Syndicate has pledged its forces. Admiral Jensen's laugh rippled across multiple dimensions. They still think this is a military problem they can solve, how disappointing. Through the dimensional windows, Zykster watched the combined fleet assemble. Over 500 capital ships representing the most advanced technology in conventional space. Under normal circumstances, such a force could reduce entire star systems to ash. But circumstances were no longer normal. They're not the only ones mobilizing, Winter said, her form coalescing from streams of data. The changes are spreading faster than expected, show him, Doctor. Blackwood gestured, and reality folded to reveal scenes across the galaxy. On countless worlds, beings were beginning to perceive the truth that humanity had hidden for so long. The boundaries between dimensions were thinning, and minds were expanding to fill new spaces. Some went mad, their consciousness shattering under the weight of infinite possibility. Others, like the Void Runners before them, adapted, evolved. Zykster saw entire species awakening to new levels of existence, their collective consciousness reaching across dimensional barriers. You planned this, he realized. The Mercenaries weren't just translators, we were proof of concept. The architects showed us that evolution requires catalysts, Jensen explained. Some minds can bridge the gap naturally, serving as anchors for others to follow. The Mercenaries, the Void Runners, now you're all nodes in a growing network of consciousness. The Council fleet launched its attack, weapons burning paths across normal space. But the human ship simply shifted sideways through reality, existing in probability states that made conventional warfare meaningless. Their counterattack came from angles that shouldn't exist, weapons operating on principles that ignored traditional physics. Watch closely, Winter commanded. This is where everything changes. The Void Runners emerged from their dimensional pockets, their ships now clearly visible as hybridized constructs of matter and possibility. They moved through the Council fleet like ghosts, their weapons not destroying enemy vessels but transforming them. Crews that had come to fight found their minds expanding, their perceptions forced open to new realities. Some resisted, their ships self-destructing rather than face transformation. Others surrendered to the change, their vessels beginning to shift and fold into new geometries. The battlefield became a crucible of evolution, fear and understanding spreading in equal measure. You're forcing this change on them, Zeixther observed, just as you forced it on me. We're offering survival, Jensen corrected. The architects are returning and the galaxy can either evolve or shatter. There is no middle ground. Through layers of folded spacetime, Zeixther perceived movement. The architects were stirring, their vast consciousness beginning to press against the thinning walls of reality. Their presence alone was enough to drive unprepared minds to madness. The Council's leaders are requesting parley, Reese announced, his form flickering with tactical projections. Their flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies. Show them, Jensen commanded. The dimensional barriers parted, creating a space where conventional beings could safely perceive higher dimensions. The Council representatives appeared, their faces masks of fear and awe as they beheld the true nature of humanity's achievements. This was never about conquest, Winter explained to them, her form stabilizing to ease their comprehension. Humanity didn't develop along conventional lines because we were shown a different path. The architects revealed that technological evolution alone leads to stagnation. True advancement requires breaking free from the constraints of linear existence. The Council members struggled to process what they were seeing. Some clutched their heads in pain as reality shifted around them. Others began to show signs of awakening, their minds stretching to accommodate new understandings. You can't force an entire galaxy to change, one of them protested, even as his own perceptions began to expand. We already have, Jensen replied. The process began centuries ago. Every human ship that seemed primitive, every technology that appeared behind the curve, all of it was preparing the galaxy for this moment. The only choice now is how to embrace the evolution. Through his enhanced senses, Zeixther perceived the truth of Jensen's words. The change was cascading through civilized space, unstoppable and irreversible. Species that had once battled over resources now found themselves grappling with infinite possibility. The very concept of scarcity became meaningless as reality itself proved malleable. The age of conventional existence was ending. And in the spaces between spaces, the architects continued their approach, their vast consciousness preparing to make contact with a galaxy that was finally ready to perceive them. The price of underestimating humanity had come due, and it would be paid in the currency of evolution itself. The transformation of the galaxy took 7 days. Not that time held the same meaning anymore, Zeixther had learned to perceive it as just another dimension to be folded and reshaped. From his elevated consciousness, he watched civilizations remake themselves in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. The architects had finally arrived, their vast forms existing in geometries that even his enhanced perception struggled to comprehend. They moved through reality like artists through a canvas, leaving changes in their wake that rippled across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It's beautiful, isn't it? Winter's voice resonated across probability spaces. Her form had long since abandoned any pretense of pure humanity, existing as a complex pattern of thought and energy. The birth of a new age. Throughout civilized space, species faced the ultimate choice: evolve or fade away. Most chose evolution, their consciousness expanding to fill new dimensional spaces. Those who couldn't or wouldn't adapt found themselves becoming living fossils, trapped in a single layer of reality while the rest of the galaxy transcended around them. The Syndicate, once the most feared criminal organization in space, had dissolved overnight. In a reality where matter and energy could be reshaped at will, concepts like wealth and power lost all meaning. Their enforcers, the ones who had driven Zeixther to take that fateful contract, now existed as pure thought patterns in the spaces between spaces. I understand now, Zeixther communicated across multiple frequencies. Why humanity hid their true nature for so long. The galaxy needed time to prepare, even unknowingly. Admiral Jensen's presence rippled through nearby probability clouds. Imagine if we'd revealed ourselves immediately. If we'd tried to force this evolution before minds were ready to conceive of its possibility, the shock would have shattered entire civilizations. Instead, humanity had played a longer game. Their seemingly primitive ships had been dimensional seeds, slowly acclimating the galaxy to new forms of existence. Every human settlement, every trade route, every diplomatic mission, all had been preparing the ground for this moment. Through the quantum overlay, Zeixter observed the Void Runners moving through dark spaces, guiding newly awakened beings through their transformation. The other mercenaries, now fully evolved, served as bridges between states of existence. Even his own crystalline form had become something new, a living lattice of possibility that could resonate with multiple realities simultaneously. The council representatives are ready, Lieutenant Reese announced, his consciousness pulsing with complex patterns. They've completed their initial transformation. The space around them shifted, creating a nexus where beings of all evolutionary states could interact. The council members appeared, their forms now fluid and abstract, yet somehow still recognizable. They had been among the first to accept the change, understanding that leadership meant adaptation. The protocols are being implemented across all sectors, one of them reported, their thoughts forming intricate geometric patterns. 93% of known species have begun the transformation. The remainder will be preserved, Dr. Blackwood interjected, his form momentarily solidifying. We're creating stable pockets of conventional space where they can continue their linear existence. Evolution cannot be forced beyond a species' capacity to adapt. The architects moved through higher dimensions, their presence reshaping reality in ways that would have driven Zeixter mad mere days ago. Now he could see their true purpose, not conquerors or destroyers, but gardeners of consciousness, cultivating new forms of existence across the multiverse. There will be resistance, Winter noted, observing pockets of conventional space where some still fought against the change. Some will cling to the old ways no matter the cost. Let them, Jensen's consciousness rippled. They'll either adapt when they're ready or become living museums of what we once were. The transformation cannot be stopped, only delayed. Through his expanded awareness, Zeixter perceived movements in the depths of intergalactic space, other entities, other civilizations, watching this transformation with interest. Humanity's grand experiment had drawn attention from beings that existed far beyond even the architect's influence. What happens now, he asked, his thoughts creating cascading patterns across dimensional barriers. Where does evolution lead when reality itself becomes malleable? Now, Winter's form shifted through infinite possibilities. Now we explore, we create, we become something that our former selves couldn't even imagine. The galaxy has been reborn, Zeixter. The only limits are the ones we choose to keep. The architects pulsed with approval, their vast consciousness resonating with new patterns of possibility. Through them, Zeixter glimpsed other galaxies, other dimensions, other forms of existence waiting to be discovered. The transformation of his galaxy wasn't an end, it was merely the first step into a larger reality. Above what had once been normal space, the human ships began to shift into their true forms, not vessels of metal and energy, but focal points of consciousness, gateways to realms beyond conventional understanding. The Void Runners moved among them like cosmic serpents, weaving new patterns into the fabric of existence. The age of linear thought and conventional physics was over.